Hello everybody, I hope you're all well. Today I'm going to be talking to you about Openqa and in particular openqa.debian.net, which is an instance of that I set up a few years ago. My name is Flip Hands. I've been a Debian developer for very nearly 25 years, but I've been slacking in the last decade or so, and this is my attempt to get back into doing more Debian work. One of the reasons that I've been slacking is because I've been distracted by small children, and I found that every time I tried to do anything about getting back into Debian, fairly soon after I started, some small child would come up to me and say, "Daddy, can we go to the playground?" And so I spent rather more time in playgrounds than actually finishing things off, which meant that there were lots of times when I'd done 90% of the work to do something, and then I found that I couldn't quite get round to testing it, and then when I got back to testing it I realised that someone else had actually done the same thing in parallel with me and finished it off, and the 90% of the work was all a waste of time. Then I came across Openqa, which is a thing for automatically testing things, and I thought, aha, what I can do is do the prep work and then let a machine do the testing. Isn't that a good idea? And then I can go and push my daughter on a swing for half an hour and come back and find out if the test's passed or failed. I'm certainly not the first person to think of doing this with Debian, as you can see from this DebConf 17 talk by Adam Meyer about Openqa as well, which was certainly an additional motivation. I think I'd already started playing with Openqa at the point that he talked about it here. This is the front page of openqa.debian.net. If you've got a Salsa ID, you should be able to log in. At the moment, it just automatically makes you a user. If there's some reason that you want to be an operator, which you might want to if you're starting to develop tests, and great, I really encourage people to give that a go. It's good fun. If there's something that you're wasting your time on testing by hand, then it doesn't take much longer than running the test yourself once, while keeping a piece of paper by your side saying what you did and what you looked for, and then turning that into Perl, which is just putting some semicolons in normally, and then you should be able to make a test that does your thing, and that's the last thing you have to do it by hand. So it's a really, if you're going to do it more than about 3 times ever, then you've just won, haven't you? I've only got one architecture that I'm trying to test at the moment, just because I don't know enough about other architectures. If you're an ARM person and you want testing done, please talk to me about it. I'd love to do some ARM stuff. If you've got some particular project you want to test, then it would be great to do more tests. So let's have a dig into some of these jobs. The sort of default normal job that the vanilla version of the tests is the gnome install, just because that's just hitting return all the way through. So let's have a look at that. It colours the screen dependent on what the result was. You get screenshots whenever it was looking for something and found it, and so you see the whole install in the form of screenshots, and you can dive in and get the screenshots. This one is one of the more complicated ones in all the tests, because it's looking for lots of different things to see what happens next. For instance, the thing it's probably going to get to is this install grub. So it's looking for the screen, for the bit on the screen that says install grub. If I let's click on that one. So that's what we're seeing at the moment, and that's what we would like to be seeing if that was a match. Okay, and you can compare things. Yeah, so there you go. When a job is actually running and you look at it, then you get one of the first tab you go into, instead of being this details one, is live, which appears in here, and you get to watch the installation as it happens if you want to. That's a great way to waste your life. I've watched many of those. Well, let's give it a go, because I think we haven't got any tests running at the moment. Let's have a look. No tests running right now, so let's tell that to try it again. Okay, so first off, it gets assigned to a worker. Here's the worker it's going to be assigned to, It tells you that it's a clone of the previous job. We get this live view, and here it is, it's booting. You know, there we are, it's debian-installer starting up, and okay. And now if we look at the all tests tab, we've actually got a job running. It's got this light blue thing, which means that it is running. We've also got 3 jobs that depend on that are blocking, and we've got the old jobs that were around. So if we look at, let's have a look at the dependencies. So I have some jobs called early fail check, which they just make sure that it managed to boot at all, really. And if your ISO that you're testing doesn't manage to boot, then it doesn't waste its time trying to boot it repeatedly to install different things. Once that's passed, it tries all of the desktops that we have, and because I've rerun this GNOME one, it's rerunning 3 jobs that depend on that. So once it's finished, it'll do that. Let's have a look at one of those. You can do any old test you like. If you can boot something, or if you can somehow get at a real machine. I haven't done any of that, but it seems that you can have a machine with a... if you had some way, if you had a KVM plugged into a real bit of hardware and some way of switching it on and off, I'm sure you could do these tests. You could probably do these tests by pointing a camera at something. So, I mean, if you had a child's toy that you could turn on and off, and you knew what the screen was meant to look like 30 seconds after it started up, and some way of pressing buttons on the thing by asserting TTL levels on your printer port, I don't know, then you could probably just do that with Openqa, just by saying, if the fuzzy picture on the child's toy through this camera looks a bit like the fuzzy picture that I'm used to seeing, then it's a win. Everything worked. You can also, I mean, it's nothing specific about looking at video either. You can tell it to send things to serial ports and then expect things back from serial ports. Anyway, so we've got the settings here that tell you what sort of machine we started up. We have dependencies. We have, you can look at previous things. Most of these tabs are missing because it's not a job that's finished. Let's have a look at the one that finished. So here we have the details of the job. So this is a BIOS boot of GNOME that's completed, and then we're booting the hard drive that resulted from that DI install. So you could do this same test using a cloud image probably, or a live image. And the test, I didn't write the test, I borrowed it from Fedora. I did start out trying to make it so that the Debian tests would be... it's raining quite a lot now. I hope it's not coming through on the soundtrack. If it is, I apologise. Where was I? Yeah, so this is taken from the Fedora Openqa test repository. I was hoping that the Debian and the Fedora tests would be something that I could make sort of portable, so that we could have common tests like this, and then the install-y bits be different. But it really hasn't worked out, which is a bit of a shame. So anyway, what this does is it boots from the hard drive that we've installed. Is that going to actually show us that? Yeah, so this is booting. This is the image just after that. First boot, first shutdown. It gets us to a login prompt, and it logs in, and then it gets to a desktop. You might think this is a funny colour. It's because of the comparison and stuff. If I can look at the real screenshot, or I can look at the comparisons. So if I get something that doesn't fit, then it's looking for... apparently it's looking for screen lock disabled. And what it's actually got is a bit of... and it's looking for SDDM. So if we look at, we can compare those. This is why this didn't match. If we do that, it's side by side. That's what we got. And if it had been running SSDM, then you'd get this warning about the screen locking not working. Okay? So you can have lots of different things that you're looking for, and it will find whatever turns up. Sometimes that can be quite, if you get too many things to look for, it gets quite confusing, because it maybe finds something you really weren't expecting because the thing you're looking for isn't specific enough. So with speech installs that happens because you can't, there's not much on screen to look for, so you end up looking for, yeah, I'll show you that, and I may have time to show you that. Then it starts the browser and it does some stuff. It for instance, it looks at the kernel archives and tries to download a patch. This is a needle. They're called needles, the things we're looking for, because you're looking for a needle in a haystack, which has changed a few times. So if we look at what's changed and why it thinks it's different, well, it hasn't changed that much, has it? So, well, actually I can see what the problem is there. If you look at this, it's got a shaded area. So let's start up the needle editor. Yeah, so I think the reason it's not matching very well is this is shaded on this line, which means that there's probably some sort of stipple pattern here. I'm going to move this up here, and then it's got a white background, which probably won't have that problem. Before it does the comparison, it turns it to grayscale, and it's willing to move things around, so, and you can tune all that. So if I go up to this bit, we have the options to change the match level, so that you can make it so it can be a worse match and it still counts as a match. Or you can change the margin, which this is how far around the screen it can move before it's, so if it was in the bottom left corner, it can't move to the top right corner, but it can move, so that's about 10% of the screen it can move at 50. I don't know why they didn't use percentages, but it looks like it's the number of pixels. Anyway, you don't want to do that. So we've only got one thing we're doing, so the click will be in the middle of that thing when it's going to click on it when it matches. And normally it puts the current date on for you here, so that you end up with a new needle and both of them can match. But I'm actually trying to make it so that this needle will be matching on the white bit instead of the grey bit. Get rid of that and do that. And make it so that, and then I can save it, and we can overwrite it, and the patch is updated, and it automatically, this is backed by a Git repository, and the Git repository has Git LFS enabled, so the images that are the part of the needles are in LFS and don't clog up the whole Git repository. And it does the commit for you, and it does the push to Salsa. So pretty much immediately after that, it's pushed to Salsa. And then there's a slight fly in the ointment here, in that for the workers to see that needle, they have to pull the Git repository. And apparently the state of the art for this, which doesn't seem very good to me, is that you run a cron job every minute and just keep on madly pulling the thing, which at some point I need to change it so that the workers can pull when they start, so that you normally get the offer to restart the job if it was a failure at this point. And if you just go ahead and click it, then quite often the job gets assigned to a worker that hasn't synced the Git repository yet, and so it fails in exactly the same way, which is pretty annoying. So then you have to remember that happened and cancel the job and start it 1 minute later, and then it's all okay. So I'd like to fix that at some point, but it's not a showstopper. As well as being able to dive into individual screenshots and things, we have the logs and assets. One thing that it does while it's doing it is it makes a video of sort of sped up version of the thing. So let's have a look at that as we go. Second minute? Yeah. So here you can see it's automatically typing for the things that it's meant to type in. It's going to the kernel, it's downloading stuff, it installs an add-on, and then it runs a bunch of shell scripts to see what the state of the machine was after you did what you did to it, and then it uploads the results of those so that we can see it in the assets afterwards. So that's that done. Sometimes if you've missed a screenshot, that video can show you what happened in between the two screenshots. We have the variables, the varjson file that was given to KVM QEMU to start it up, so you can have a look at that. We have the autoinst log, that's actually the log of the running test. Oh yeah, there we are. So it's looking for browser launcher, which is the Firefox icon on the desktop, and then it clicks it and tells you where it's clicked. So mouse move, send pointer event, and that's it starting the browser, and then here it's looking for the browser coming up. We also get a list of all the packages on the machine that's running the VM. So if something changes and everything breaks, then you can compare the working set of packages to the broken set of packages. That is the shell scripts that uploaded all the assets. They get run with a nonce that gets echoed back up the serial port, along with the exit code, so that Openqa can know whether the script completed properly. If you've got no other option, you can also just splurge diagnostics and things at the serial port, and it ends up in there, which means that you can get hold of it. These are the things that it collected. So, for instance, this is what's installed on the system under test at the end of the Firefox test. One of the things one of the scripts does is actually looks for the patch you downloaded to see if it looks plausible, which I think is quite nice. So this test, it tests that you can add add-ons to it by adding uBlock Orange in, and it tests that you can do downloads, and really looks to see if the download happened and we've got the patch file in the right place. And the post run tests do things like I check whether the disk is full, because quite often things go horribly wrong when you fill the disk, and it's very confusing if you think that you haven't filled the disk and you have. We also get the syslog off the machine. For instance, let's look for Firefox again here. No idea what's going on there, but apparently GNOME shell is hiding things because parental controls are not set. I don't know. Also, you get a link to the ISO that was used to install the hard drive in the GNOME job, so that you can trace back which one that is, and maybe so that you can download it and try it locally and see if you can reproduce what this test is showing. It also gives you a copy of the hard drive that it booted. So it's pretty handy if you see an issue in something and go, wait a second, how can I reproduce that? Well, you've got the hard drive that just did it, so you ought to be able to, unless it's just an artifact of the system it was running on somehow. You've also got this settings thing, which tells you things like why it's doing that collect data, and which test it's running, and it starts after the GNOME test. So this is how you link things together, by setting these settings in a template. That's a complicated subject. I may have time to go into that here, I'm not sure. You also get the next and previous results. So we have the one that's running at the moment, we have all these previous successes. Let's see if we can find a failure. Oh, there's one. So why did that fail? Okay, so we have well, we have this bit matching over here, two bits of the needle is matching over here, and something not matching over there, but that looks weird. So you can do this swiping back and forth thing. So well, that hasn't changed up there, but actually this remove button down the bottom, down here, if you look at that, it used to have, well, one side it's got the sort of highlighty surround, and the other one it's a simpler button. So that's why that broke. And so that didn't match in April. I guess what happened was I did something that did match. Yeah, since subsequent jobs, I guess what happened is that this changed, and then I've got a new needle after that job, which this job wouldn't have access to, so you won't see it on this menu. But later on, there's a new needle that does match this screen. So that's what happens sometimes, is that you see that it's the data has rotted a bit because someone's updated the user interface, and it's very easy to I can recreate what I did then, so it's almost matching there, and the remove is trying to match that. So if we take this take matches off, then it puts it back where it was meant to belong, and then you can just move that around. So this is the new image without the border around it, and I guess what I did at the time was just that. It's really simple, doesn't require much concentration, doesn't have to be done by the person that wrote the test, doesn't have to be done by someone that knows how to write tests. So you can split these jobs up between people. It's pretty cute, and then you just hit the save button and it will update the date, so you get an idea of when this was updated. It makes quite a lot of sense. And then if I did that, I would be presented with the chance to retry the job. Then you click the retry the job, and hopefully it works the next time around. Going back to this screen and looking back at the top, if you've got a failed job like this one, you get an investigation tab here, which tells you things that have changed. It would be nice if it told you things that have changed between the uploaded assets as well, but that doesn't currently happen, so that's a feature that I'd like to add to Openqa at some point. What else have we got around here? We've got the all tests bit. So this GNOME job has almost finished. It tends to sit for quite a long time at 100% because it has to convert the file system into something that it can, the QCOW2 format, and then it has to upload it to the main server, and that takes quite a while. So once it's done that, then these other three jobs, the next try it, the browser, there's a desktop printing one which makes sure that you've got a PDF that looks right after you've printed a text file, which is quite a nice test. Test lots of things, and we've got this test. Let's have a look at app start stop. I go through to the previous one that actually worked. Then this just trundles its way through, it logs in to the installed system, and then it trundles its way through all the apps that are part of the GNOME app menu thing. It knows that some of them are on submenus, and this is a Fedora script that does this again. But it's quite nice. It didn't take much patching to work with the Debian selection of apps. So, and it proves that quite a lot of things are working. So let's have a look at this maps thing. You going to do it? Come on. There's a good lad. Okay, so you get to see the screens that it's matched, and it's looking for the maps icon over there. That's good. It's not looking for very much. It's looking for that tiny little bit of the screen there. Now, if you want to write tests, it might not seem obvious, but the thing to do is install it on your own machine. It makes developing of tests much quicker. So here we're looking at Openqa on my laptop. This is something you can customize. On Openqa Debian.net I turn this off, but I leave it on my laptop so that I know which instance of Openqa I'm looking at, because it's very annoying to think you're editing something on one, edit it on the other one, and mess up Git or something. I've got mine configured so that it doesn't bother doing logins, and then you can log in as Debo. So that's another hint on the user interface, is that if you're logged in as demo, chances are it's not openqa.debian.net. Yeah, and I've also been playing around with Fedora bits, and yeah. Okay, let's find something to fix, and I'll show you what one might do to add some functionality to a test. So I'm looking at an LXD install, and this is the bit where we choose the partitioning scheme, and by default the code that does this, it looks for partitioning scheme and it just hits return, which gets you the all files in one partition option. And if we wanted to test out what happens when we have a separate home partition, then what we can do, if we have a look at this code, partitioning scheme, here we are. It's very complicated. It looks for partitioning scheme and it sends the key return. And what we could do is have something a bit like this, where it says if check var, I don't know, separate home, or, well, probably it's going to end up with something like partitioning scheme equals separate home. So you could say, well, this should probably be a case statement type thing, you know, if else if, which says if it's one particular partitioning scheme, we do one thing, you know, or it selects how many downs to hit before it hits return. So I'm going to do the most simple-minded thing. I'm going to add something where it looks for a variable, and if it's got the variable, it does a down. Here we are in the same file in Emacs. I'll just do some top quality cut and paste editing. Partitioning scheme. There we go. Okay. Probably ought to have an underscore in there. Don't know. Let's try clicking on the actual window rather than the video. There we are. Still recording? Yeah, good. So that should be all that's required. If I do that, we get to see. Looks plausible. So I've made an edit to the tests locally. Now we want to try it out, I suppose. Open. So there's this script, Openqa clone job. You say where you're getting the job from. You say where you want to send the job to. The job we're talking about, I'm going to use 19030. That's a recent LXD job that I've just clicked through the user interface on openqa.debian.net and noticed the number in the URL. And we probably want to set partitioning scheme equals home, because that's the thing we just changed. So if we do that, we can see if it works. Training dependencies. Sorry about the wrapping of the line. So it's getting the test ISO. This will take a while. Sometime later, let's have a look at this. So this is running on my laptop. I'm in developer mode because I have full access to my own laptop. So you can do it on your laptop too. Developer mode is cute. You can take control of a test, and let's have a look. You can tell it when something fails to pause rather than to actually fail. You can make it pause immediately. You can select a module to pause on when it gets there, so that you can wander off and not have to catch it on the way past. And you get to see it typing away, and it's all good. Hopefully we have set partitioning scheme. Yeah, so we've got a partitioning scheme set here that wouldn't be in the normal job because I put it on the command line when I cloned it. So we go back to the live view, maybe we'll see it actually do the partitioning. Hey look! Separate partitions. And we've got I think we had a home and a swap there. We'll find on the yeah, okay. Well, you probably don't want to watch the rest of that. I've certainly watched this a few too many times in my life. So I think that's enough for that. So here's the push on salsa for adding the partitioning scheme setting, and if we whiz down to the pipeline, we've got a multi-project pipeline, which is actually, yeah, this takes ages. Here we go. Error, job failed. GPG error. The following signatures could not be verified because the public key is not available. That's crap. How boring. Hopply hopply hop. What we got there then? Ah, it's failed. Why is it failing? I think I really need a runner of my own, because Docker takes minutes to start and then it takes about 1 second to run the script. So we can make this a lot quicker. If anybody wants to tell me how to do that, that would be great. Well, as you can see, that demo didn't actually work out in the end. It used to work, but currently not. I imagine I'll get it working in the next 2 days. So, never mind. At least the first demo worked. Well, I hope that's given you some sort of idea of what is possible with Openqa. I'm really only starting to scratch the surface myself. So there's lots of things I haven't tried out yet. There's lots of things that I'd like to try out but haven't got round to. It's impressive. I really like OpenQA. As well as that, there's the packaging of it. I've packaged it. Those openqa.debian.net is running out of Debian packages, but they're not uploaded yet because they include embedded JavaScript and things like that, which makes Lintian complain, and I'd like to fix all the Lintian warnings before I do my first upload on it. If people know how to train Modulicious into not downloading things and to instead using locally installed copies of the same things, then please get in touch and tell me how to do it, because I haven't got around to finding out yet. And there's things like that on the packaging side, but it's pretty much ready. There's not much left to do. Hopefully I'll have a chance to do it during DebConf. Maybe it's already done by the time this goes out. Okay? With that, I will leave enough time for questions and answers. And I'll give you a few URLs to look at on the last slide. The first one's obvious. The second one is the source code and packaging for the Debian packages, which I'm running on openqa.debian.net. The third one is the repository for the tests that I'm running on openqa.debian.net. This is a link to the talk that I gave 2 days ago, which is about how I plumb Debian installer source into all this a bit. So if you're interested in hacking on Debian installer, then you can have a look at that if you didn't see it. If you need to get in touch with me about any of this stuff, if you want to volunteer to write tests, if you would like me to test something and you haven't got time to write tests, that's all right too. I'm quite happy to be inspired by people's requests. Then send me an email at phil@hands.com and we will sort something out. And you can also get hold of me on IRC. My nick is FIL. So that's it, I think.
And now we have some questions about the Debian OpenQA setup for Phil. And the first question says, any idea if there is any testing on Apple M1 processors due to those being new ARM processors that Debians need to be ported over to still?
So far I've only been doing AMD 64, mostly because that's what I know how to do, and there's enough things to do to set it up in the first place, let alone messing around with all the many different architectures and combinations that you could do. So I am doing all the desktops that we do, but only on AMD 64. If people know how to set up virtual ARMs that we can test, or how to remote control real machines if you point a KVM at them, it should work. Then please get in touch, because I haven't got any of the kit and I don't know how to do it.
I know Alyssa Rosenwig helped port from the Apache Linux project, but I think that's still non-stable in testing. Not sure how far it went. Anyways, next question. Are you testing the live images as well?
I have done it occasionally. I haven't actually set up tests that are being regularly done. The main reason for that actually is that at the moment I'm sort of crawling the CD site with a really crappy script that looks at the times in the listing on the HTTP server. I would much rather have it so that when the images are generated, that they use the API to kick themselves into testing. And I haven't written that bit of the script yet. So once I've written that bit of the script and worked out where to put it on the CD building machine, then I'll probably end up sticking it onto the end of every CD builder that I can find.
All right, and then we have a comment. I was implementing a project with OpenQA in my day job, and I was thinking of doing the same with Debian, and it turned out you have already completed while I was just thinking. I was looking at your test, very impressive. I know the pains in setting up the tests and needles.
Yes, it can take a long time. It happens to fit into my lifestyle quite well, though. So you can spend 10 minutes here and 20 minutes there setting up new tests, and then let them run and not bother looking at them live, and only look at the thumbnails afterwards. And then you can add a needle and just hit the retry and go off and do something else. So it's taken about 5 years, but not very hard work in the 5 years. So it's taken a lot longer than it would have done if I was actually doing it full time.
And then we have the third question. How exact do the screenshots have to match? What happens if one pixel is slightly different? Do I need to retake that screenshot? Or is that is there some level of fuss I can specify as acceptable?
Right, I did skim over that in the talk, but it renders all the images to grayscale before doing the comparisons. So if there's some slight issue about the way a shade is changing, then that tends to get sorted out by the grayscaling, and then it does a slightly fuzzy match, and you can tune how fuzzy it is. So it normally aims for 96% accuracy, which I've no idea what that 96% relates to. I know that if you set it to less than about 80, it'll match all sorts of things that you didn't expect. So, but you can tune it. If you know that something varies a little bit, then you can. Quite a good way of doing it is to have several patches on the screen that you look for and let them all be a bit rubbish. And if all three of them are there and they sort of match, then it's probably the right screen. Because you don't really care. Most of the time, you don't care whether it's a real match or not. You care whether you're on the right screen or not.
And then we have a fourth question. Is openqa.debian.net available only to Debian developers or all Salsa users? Because when I was trying to log in, it failed with the redirect URI included is not valid. I only have one package uploaded via sponsor.
Yeah, that's my fault. I was fiddling with the HTTP to HTTP redirect to try and get Let's Encrypt to be able to pick up its token to make sure that we've got HTTPS certificates, and I messed up the redirect change. So, well, we've got Let's Encrypt working, but it's not redirecting the top level anymore. So if you go to the HTTPS, it works. Right. I will fix the redirect at some point soon.
And then there's question 5. How does OpenQA differ from the work entails? They'll also test their ICE images.
Yeah, I don't know, but I got the impression that Tails were using something like OpenQA. What's the other thing that works like that? Cucumber or something. I was doing some stuff with Jenkins earlier before I got into OpenQA, and there are ways of plumbing that together. And I've now forgotten all the details of that, but I think they might have been using something a bit like that. So, yeah. Sorry, don't know.
And then we have 1 minute left, so I think we have time for question 6, and maybe we can ask question 7 in the Etherpad later. Question 6 is, should we prevent competition with auto package test, or do you think they are really complementary? I'm not totally complementary. How do you see this?
Auto package test is about testing whether the software is running properly, really, on the system, and this is about whether it looks right, which I think they're almost orthogonal. If you manage to download something with Firefox, most of it is working, but if it looks horrible, then this test will fail. If you've got something for testing it which doesn't look at it, so the user wouldn't be able to use it, but it can still download things, then I think auto package test might survive that test in that circumstance. They're just testing different things, so I think that's fine.
And that's all the time we had for questions. Thank you so much, Phil, for the talk.
You're welcome. I hope everybody enjoyed it.